Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the BPCA webinar on principles of goal control. Welcome to everybody. How many have we got of you today? I think 179 so far. Blimey, that's for a very topic-specific webinar. There's a lot of people, so there's obviously a lot of you that have got concerns or questions and things you want to know about goal control. Just before I get started on what we're going to go through and the actual webinar, I just want to do a bit of housekeeping. Firstly, technical issues. So again, a lot of you are probably used to these things, you know what to do if anything happens, but just for those that might be new to it, if there's any sound problems or video problems that you have, you can put a comment in the chat section. So I've got a colleague of mine, Kat, who's kindly sat in the background there just in case we have any major issues and maybe I disappear or start stuttering or go off. And if that happens, Kat will come on and just, get you guys to just bear with, and I'll try and sort it my end. Again, sound should be good today. I've got a new little microphone, so hopefully we won't have any issues with that. I found before sometimes I could go in and out, so hopefully that's good. Questions, Q&A. So I predict that today we are going to get a lot of questions about real-time scenarios, maybe things you've experienced last year, things you are anticipating to be happening this year. That's great, and I think today, a lot of things, some things changed yesterday, and I've had lots of questions coming in on email before this webinar, and I've realised that I think the big value will be in you submitting your questions and then me doing my best to be able to answer them in the best way possible. And maybe also any of you out there, if you could see any questions come up or you have any advice to the general participants, please add it on there. I do feel that BPCA, we're heavily involved in bird control and the licensing, the legislation, and we've got some good knowledge on it. But you guys are on the ground; you've got that real practical knowledge and practical experience. So yeah, please share some stuff. If you see anything come up and you think, oh, I've got that's good input for that, please let us know. Also, in terms of the Q&A, I do predict again that by the end of this session, which is only 1 hour, as we know, there are going to be some outstanding questions, which again, I will print them off afterwards. I'll put some typed answers to it and then get it out on an email to everybody. So don't not ask a question because you think there's too many coming in, because they're really, really important, whether I get to answer them verbally here or whether it's going to be afterwards in an email written down, they'll get answered. So please make sure that you do that. And that's in the Q&A section. Don't put anything in the chat section because I won't see it, just in the Q&A section. CPD points, 1 point for today, as always. It's an hour. You can re-watch this webinar as well. So if you've got any colleagues that are interested in it and couldn't make it today, then you'll be able to view it on our website and YouTube over the next day or two. Just depends how quickly we can get it uploaded for you. And yeah, really just a bit of expectation for this webinar. It is aimed at people who are new to the industry, as well as those that have been doing goal work, bird work for a long time. However, I think this will be more beneficial for those that have been in doing goal work and bird work for a longer period of time, and you've got a bit of experience with it, because I think anybody new to the industry, some of the historic items or the reasons why these things have happened or why they might be happening, if you're new to the industry, you may not be quite clear on that, and I just haven't got time to cover it in too much detail. So yeah, I think it's still worth it absolutely for you to be here, and but it is very specific to goals and licensing. Now, the title there, Principles of Goal Control for Pest Professionals. I say the principles, there's no biology, there's no behavior, there's no me talking about the in-depth workings of scaring devices or anything like that. Just haven't got time. It really is about this up and coming gull season, if you like, and how you can best best address that and be successful in whatever it is that you need to do. So okay, I'm gonna start sharing my screen now. So this is sometimes when it can take a minute, but hopefully we'll just bear with me. That seemed like it worked a bit quicker than I expected, so fabulous. I think my colleague Kat will let me know if there's any issues, but I don't believe there is. Okay. So with the goal, in terms of what we're going to talk about, I did mention it just a moment ago, but it's going to be a really brief, really brief history of the licensing goals. As I mentioned, a lot of you are going to be really experienced with this. You're going to have been involved over these last couple of years and everything that happened. So me spending too much time on the things that you kind of already know, and to be honest, it's good to know what the history is, but for you to get some real benefit out of this webinar, it's not going to be as important to you, but I will cover it just for those that just want reminding. And then of course the licensing process and what you need to do. Okay, that is the topic of today. I'm hoping that I can get through it in say half an hour, 35 minutes, that we've got a good chunk of time at the end to address questions. You may feel some of the slides I'm going through quickly. There's 21 of them, but I certainly won't be spending a lot of time on all of them because, as I said, I'm trying to adapt this so it's as useful to you as possible. And again, questions really important. Okay, so the brief history. Now, this presentation, the principles of this webinar will cover all of the nations. There will be a lot of mention about England and natural England, but as I said, generally it's all the same principles apply. In terms of the Wildlife and Countryside Act, that's where the protection of birds lies. All birds are protected, doesn't matter what bird it is. Everything from a pigeon to a sparrow and a gull and a hawk, everything's protected. However, of course, as we know, there's certain licenses are issued for that. Now, this is the same for all the nations of the UK. Now, the difference here is at the bottom there you can see Northern Ireland. So Northern Ireland actually still has a general license for gull control, and they have the lesser blackback gull, the herring gull, I think even the greater blackback gull as well, I do believe. So actually, if you're from Northern Ireland and you listen to this presentation, a lot of it won't apply to you, and that's because you don't need to apply for an individual license to control gulls, no matter what you're doing. So yeah, that's there's the name of the license there, just in case you maybe didn't realize that. Maybe you're new to the industry and you can go and have a look at that license. So really, this presentation for England, Scotland and Wales, it certainly does apply. Slightly different names for the applications, but all the principles are the same. So just because I mentioned England a fair bit here, natural England, that's just where all this kind of originated from, the issues that we had and where these application processes are coming from. In terms of the history of it before April 2019, as we know, it's similar to Northern Ireland back then when we had gull species on the general licenses, so we didn't have to apply for an individual license. All we had to do is make sure in our own minds that we're competent. There is a genuine need to deal with a gull species, and I've put there GL05, which is the public health and public safety license, general license that we had back then. And that I am being specific with that, and there might be other reasons or other situations where some of you might have dealt with gulls. It might be in conservation, and I will be focusing a bit on public health and public safety here, but that's just because that's the most common reason why we might have used these licenses and now need to use an individual license. But yeah, this license permitted us to kill and take any stage of the lesser blackback gull, and then for the herring gulls it was only the eggs and nest to take and damage and destroy. Actually, the adult bird, that would have been a license application, but in most situations we didn't need to do that. Said no application, you didn't have to prove evidence of non-lethal control, and you didn't have to report back to Natural England on the things that you'd done, or Natural Scotland and so on and so forth. We was all very much used to that, of course. And then when April 2019 happened, that's when a few issues occurred. So we had GL04, 05 and 06. This is England, not license numbers, but again, the principles apply. Public health and public safety, and we had some conservation ones, as well as protection of damage, things like crops, etc. So all of these licenses had the goals on there. However, in April 2019, we're all familiar with the group of Wild Justice, and the important thing to remember here is that Wild Justice, didn't challenge the basic principles of general licenses. They just felt that they needed to offer more protection to birds, because the 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 basic principles of the general license, yeah, of course, you've got to control birds that are causing a major public health and public safety risk to humans. Of course, we've got to do that. But the license, the way it was written and the way that it was used, it just didn't comply with the law. And this is what happened. It went to Natural England, of course. I mean, of any class action cases like this, they will always take it to the larger country or nation, because if they get success in that nation, it will generally then filter out to the other nations. So Wales and Scotland follow suit, and of course there's a similar process there as there is now. I'll go into that process in a moment. But yeah, as well, justice that got things in motion. And absolutely there's different feelings towards it and opinions on it, but at the end of the day, those licenses didn't cover what the legislation said they had to cover. They weren't detailed enough. And I bet everybody here can say at one point, maybe they used a general license, and didn't really consider it actually fully. You've got to sort of sometimes sit down and think to yourself, maybe that was the case. So maybe there were some changes needed. Um, I'm not going to talk about general licenses anymore, because all gull species, of course, were taken off of licenses. And when they were reissued in June of 2019, they weren't there, no longer there. So of course the season for the gull species then was pretty much at its end. As we know, usually generally August time, we might see a huge reduction in the birds fledging and leaving those nests behind. So we wouldn't have necessarily needed it. And then of course came round to 2020, January, February, March, April of 2020, and there was an issue. So in terms of these gull species being taken off, and having to apply for an individual license, and it's because of conservation status. Now, again, it's all the history and the reasons behind it, but it is conservation status. Due to the declines of the rural breeding populations, some of the studies were based on this, of herring gulls and lesser blackback gulls. People seeking control of these species who still need to apply for that individual license. The only exception to this is on airfields, which you can operate under a class license. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about class licenses, but if it's on an airfield, then you can apply for that. In terms of the license and what it allows, it's permitted to prevent disease, agricultural damage, and the conservation of public health and public safety. So that's what the AO8 license is, and the reason why it's been taken off of the general and onto an individual license is so that there's more control. Natural England can, see what you're doing, why you're doing it, and authorize it, and actually give their view on whether or not what you're intending to do is necessary. And that's to, retain that conservation status. These gulls are on an amber list, so they're considered to be at risk. As it says there, there's been a fall of 60% since the 80s, and for the herring gull, and then 48% for the lesser blackback gull. So it's conservation status. That's the issue here. But they're not saying you can't do it. You just have to apply for a license. Okay. Natural England are currently actually analysing the urban gull survey, which took place in 2020, and this is to refine their gull licensing approach in the built or the urban environment. They're working with stakeholders. We're involved a lot with Natural England, DEFRA, and other nations. We've got a regional forum next week for Scotland, and we've got some Nature Scotland with them there talking about gull licensing as well. For anybody on this webinar that's lives in Scotland or works in Scotland, you might be interested to come on to that forum next week. But they're analysing this data, and as the years go on, processes may get better, they may get quicker. But Natural England is certainly analysing the data that we have in terms of gull numbers, conservation status. Okay, so for 2020, I am predicting that we will get some questions or comments around last year. Now, of course, last year is important because there were some major lessons that had to be learnt. There was some work that Natural England and DEFRA had to do to make 2021 better. And of course, with consultation with ourselves and other stakeholders, we had lots of our members involved in that consultation as well, and that's worked towards what this hopefully better process in 2021 will be. But yeah, last year, the main issues is that, okay, it was slow, and it was, you know, the communication was pretty poor, but you've got to ask yourself why. Now, in hindsight is a wonderful thing, but we do need to look at why. Now, this was a brand new process for Natural England. They didn't really know how many applications they would get because, as mentioned before, a general license, you didn't have to report anything. You didn't have to tell anyone about what you were doing. So they didn't really have any idea on how many of you were actually doing goal control, or how many areas around the UK needed goal control. They had no idea. So of course the applicant, I think they got over 1,000, by the end of March, beginning of April, and obviously that mixed with COVID kicking in and staffing issues and people having to transition to working at home and having that reliable communication, that's going to have impacted as well. In staff levels, not just the problems of them having to change the way they worked, as we all did. The staffing levels possibly. But I think one of the, which I'm going to talk a bit about in a moment, I think from our end, how we can address that, because their communication side is being addressed. I'll come on to that in a moment. But how we can best address how things can be improved more is by providing the information they need. That was a big issue. That was, a big part of their feedback was that, yes, there was some communication issues, timing issues, and there was some improvement needed on their part. However, there's also improvement on our part needed, in terms of what we supply with the application. In Scotland, actually, the feedback was pretty good. I haven't, in terms of the applications that were sent, I haven't really spoken to anyone yet that had a problem. The application process is similar. It's a bit more spreadsheet formed rather than a template document. But yeah, the feedback was pretty good in Scotland. Wales was similar to England. Lots of issues. Very few licenses approved, if any. I don't think I have actually found anyone yet who got a license approved. I think I might have dreamt that I spoke to somebody that had a license approved for England, but I think I did dream that because I can't seem to find them. And of course with Northern Ireland, they're still enjoying their general licenses. So Scotland and Northern Ireland, you're not doing too bad. Whereas England and Wales, where we had a bit of a problem last year, which hopefully will get resolved this year. So this is a little bit of a decision tree that we've got here, just to, what you should be doing on every single job that you go to where you might need to control lesser blackback gull and herring gulls. And the question that you've got to ask yourself is, do you need to lethally control these birds? You've got to ask yourself that genuinely. Is there not any other option? Is there no, non-lethal options? Is there any proofing? Is there any scaring? Is there any human presence that might work? Is there anything that can be done? Is there something that hasn't been done in the past that you can try? You've got to ask yourself that question. And if you say, yes, I absolutely need to do lethal control. Now, this stage I'll address in a moment in terms of what you need to do for the application, but this is your thought process. So you're going to decide whether or not you need to lethally control. You're then going to say, okay, do you need to carry out this work to preserve air safety? Some of you might work on airfields, and if you do, that's a class license. It's a CL12 class license. They're different, site specific. I'm not going to go into class licenses and organizational licenses, although I'm going to mention it later, interestingly. But yeah, so if you're doing that, if you need to control them lethally, and it's not on an airfield, then again, like I mentioned before, you've got to ask yourself, have you tried all reasonable, practicable, non-lethal methods of control? I'll go into this in a bit more in a moment. So again, if you go, yeah, absolutely, I've considered everything I possibly can in terms of non-lethal control. Great, fabulous. Move on to your next step then, which will be, is the area you're in urban or rural? Now, there's a definition there. I'm not going to read it out. You can all have a little nose. On the Gov website, Natural England website, you can see that definition. Some of us may work on landfill sites, maybe farms, but I think predominantly most of you on here, you've been dealing with urban issues. Now, I mean, the reason why it's important is, there are different restrictions on rural and urban areas. For example, an IPM plan is not needed for rural. I don't know how many of you have heard of this, but so let me just go back to that previous slide. If you are working in an urban area, then you'll see when you go on to the licensing area of the Natural England website, you'll see a copy of the license, and you'll also see an integrated pest management plan. Now, this is something you need to submit with the application. If you're working rurally, you don't need to submit that. Do I go into why? I won't here. Again, we're limited on time, but certainly if you're in an urban area, you need to submit that plan. Now, again, it's on the Gov website. It's where you download the A08 license. It's in the same place. It's right there underneath it. So you download it. You go through it like any other application or form you would, and tell them about the integrated pest management that you've done, attempted, have done, not done, can't do. It's all self-explanatory. You need to fill that in as well. It's an A0. Is it called A09? I think it is. But it's there. It's there for you to download and submit. So make that decision. If it's urban, let's go with urban. So you've done, decided it's urban. You've done your IPM strategy plan or management plan. Now, this is an extra bit. I literally added this yesterday, so it might not seem like it's in exactly the right place, but this time yesterday was when I was adding this slide. Now, this time, I would say end of last year, Natural England is where it is at the moment. Decided that this is where the A09 comes in. They'll do a screening phase. Now, this was decided to help with you having almost I'm not sure if I can do this Gull work, so I'm going to ask Natural England first on their opinion without having to go through the whole process of filling out an A08 form. This screening process will help you answer lesser questions on an electronic format, and you will be able to or that you'll be allocated an officer that will assess your answers and then tell you whether or not you're likely to get a license. So the screening phase is not essential. You don't have to do the screening phase. You can just go straight for an A08 license without asking them basically whether or not they think you'll be successful. It's not essential, but it will determine the likelihood of you getting an A08. So I think that will help some of you that are maybe not 100% or you're not sure whether you've got enough evidence. It's good advice prior to the application, and if they feel that absolutely what you've told us seems like it's going to be legal to do and you'll be successful, then they'll invite you to apply. But again, it's not essential, and you're normally allocated an officer as well, so you'll have someone direct that you can talk to, not just a generic email. Now, to request a screening form, this is what was new yesterday. There were some issues with some platform they were trying to use, but you need to request a screening form, and there's the email there. It's on the Gov website. We sent out a e-bulletin yesterday, so you should have seen on there where there'll be all sorts of links in there for you to have a look at and see this email. Now, as a little test, I emailed it, said, can I have a screening form, please? And they got back to me within 10 minutes saying, oh, we've got your email, we'll get back to you. And then 10 minutes after that, they sent me another email with the link to the electronic form. And as it said, I clicked on that link, went through to a form, I filled it out, just to try and get through the steps so I could have a look for you guys and tell you a bit about it. And it goes through, of course, asks you about the site details, says, have you got any evidence of this work needing doing? If you say no, then it'll come to right, okay, well, you're going to submit this. We'll probably need some more information, but if you haven't got any evidence, then you'll obviously just submit it from here. If you click yes about the evidence, then they ask you a bit more about what evidence and, are you able to provide things like photographs and so on. So it goes through steps, you submit it, and then they come back to you. So I obviously didn't submit mine because it was just a bit of a test. How quick they'd be with that, I don't know. But within 30 minutes, I'd had all of the links I needed and the links that I needed. So it was pretty good. So, and in terms of issuing the licenses now, they've got that screening process. You'll then go on to the A08 license, which can take up to 30 days. If they say to you, yep, look, we think you'll be successful from what you've told us. You probably have got enough information. Go and apply for an A08, or you might decide to do that before it. They will assess that application, of course. You know, you must not start lethal control or hire a contractor for lethal control before Natural England has granted your license. That's important. Okay. Um, so, you put your license application in, you need to wait for that to come back. And again, these timing wise can take up to 30 days. So again, why we've timed this webinar now is that generally eggs and nests will go down sort of beginning of April, let's say, at an earliest. So getting your applications in any time from now up until, say, beginning of March, I think will be the latest date. But it's recommended, if you need to lethally control, you need to get that application in. Okay. Yeah, you need to report your actions as well that you take using the license. Again, all the templates are there. It says they're LR08, but they're all in chronological order. If you go onto the Gov website, put in the search bar A08 Natural England license, or Welsh Assembly license, or whatever nation you may be in, it'll come up. It'll have the application there, as well as any supporting documentation, the IPM plan, the reporting any actions that you've taken templates. So it's all there for you, as well as some good guidance. There is some other guidance there about non-lethal control. I recommend you have a good read of everything. And what I should have sort of mentioned at the beginning, and something we need to accept, is that you know gull control, bird control generally, is a specialist area, and certainly gull control requires a certain level of specialist knowledge and experience. So and coming along with that, even more so now, you've got to commit your time to learning about these licenses, how they work, why they're there, what you need to do to be successful. You need to do this. And it might take more time. And of course, when we had the general licenses, we didn't need to do this. So you could have got on with work easier, your customers were happier, and it was less stressful for you. But those are the sorts of things that you need to plan into your contractual agreements with any customers, is that the application process is covered within your quotations, and the time that you're allocating, because it is a fact of how things are now. Don't shoot the messenger or anything. Of course, we're always talking to Natural England and asking them about what's happening, as well as obviously Welsh Assembly and Scotland and Northern Ireland, as and when that might change. And trying to work for you in the best interest for you. That's something we're always trying to do. Just having a look at time, on track, good. Um, so before that license, then let's look at, before you apply for that license, you have to, in your own mind, say to yourself, right, non-lethal methods. Have I genuinely tried all of them? That's what you need to ask yourself. And of course, I'm not going to go into all these different methods that you've got there. Audio. It might be falconry, might be proofing, might even be human presence. If you've got an area where you can send someone up to the roof, every a couple of times a day to wander around and have a presence there, then maybe that would work. It's not a massive thing that I've heard people doing, but apparently it can work to deter them. Of course, I don't think they would feel overly comfortable if there was a lot of human activity there. Obviously, of course, I've mentioned there the integrated pest management plan. There is a template on Natural England website, like I mentioned. And you also need to be certain of the effects of these methods. So let's say you've looked at proofing and you've gone to a roof. You can see an image there. We've got some poles up and some netting. You've got to look at that. Genuinely consider being able to proof an area to stop them gulls from being able to nest on there. Now, cost is absolutely a thing. So if you're looking at proofing or decoys or falconry, and the suitability just isn't there, or the cost is too high, or the structure of the urban environment maybe where isn't suitable for falconry. I mean, I'm not a falconry expert, but I think I remember that, having an area that's particularly built up with many structures can be an issue with flying birds because of miscommunication or getting lost, not being able to have that visual sight from handler to bird. So they can be issues, and audio. Doing audio scaring devices in residential areas. I don't think they'd be too pleased if they've got a a loud audio scaring device going off at all hours of the day. I certainly wouldn't be. So you've got to consider all these non-lethal methods and why they are not suitable, and you've got to record these things. It's fine thinking about it in our own minds and discussing it verbally and on the telephone or face to face with your customers and other people, but you need to be writing it down, because that's the only way you can evidence that these things are not working or won't work or are too costly to put in place. For when you apply, when you put that application in, you've got to tell a story, really, when you're filling out these licenses and you're doing your application and your integrated pest management plan. You have got to tell a story saying that you have no alternative option. You've got to consider historic issues, current and future as well. There's a whole process to this, in terms of what Natural England want to see, and that authorising officer, let's call them, needs to see to be confident to issue a license. A good document to refer to also is the Wildlife Management Advice Note, and it talks about legal measures to resolve conflict with wild birds. Be a great training document. Again, it's on the same place where you find the license. You scroll down, I think you scroll down maybe half the page or towards the bottom, and you'll see a link saying there's a few documents there that you can use to again, great CPD, take advantage of that. And again, it gives you some ideas of the things that you can do. And I'm sure most of you here today, all this stuff. You know about audio and falconry and proofing and decoys. And you're like, oh, Natalie, it doesn't work. It can't work. I need a license. Okay, you need a license. So fill all these things out. You've said, yes, all these things don't work. And you've recorded it. So the application takes you through the steps. What I always say is, imagine you are the one sat there authorizing this license to murder, as some people will see it, large birds like gulls. That's how you've got to have it in your mind. That authorizing officer is allowing you, if they approve it, to obviously take eggs and nests. I know there's a lot of it. In some situations, I think some of you maybe cull the birds, but I think predominantly it's nest and egg removal, which is lethal control. So, they're going to be authorizing you to kill birds, in effect, stop their breeding, hinder them. So they've got to be absolutely certain that it is absolutely necessary. They've got the conservation status to consider and the Wildlife at Countryside Act to consider. They've got they can't just do it off of the back of, well, I've said that there's problems, or look, me and my customer have told you in the application there's problems. They want to see evidence. They want to see why. That's fine. And the other item here is I've had a few emails about some of you with public health and like really genuine serious public health and public safety risks. It might be fire, it might be flooding, it might be disease and contamination, it might be a hospital roof where the gulls are around an extraction fan or air conditioning unit, and the droppings are maybe getting through into areas where they really shouldn't and putting people at risk. Real public health and public safety concerns. Now, where there is a public health and public safety concern, that's been clear, and other nations as well, is that you will get a license. Of course, you will get a license. You will absolutely be approved for a license if there is that genuine need. You just have to prove it. You can't just say there's a problem and get upset about it, or your customer get upset about it, or send emails back and forth saying how bad it is and putting those as evidence. It's you've got to prove it. That's it. I'm saying it's simple, of course, from your guys' point of view, it's not, but you've got to evidence it. Now, in terms of the key evidence that's needed, it's the purpose, the species numbers, and then the details of what non-lethal methods you've tried. So, in terms of the purpose, so let's go with that. Let's say you've got a roof and they're blocking all the gutters. Okay, great. What about you've got to take photographs, 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 photographs. I'll say it 1,000 times. If you get called for any work, but especially bird work, especially gull work, you get your camera out, you get your phone out, you take photographs, you tell your customers to take photographs. When you're not there and stuff's happening that's causing a problem, attacking people, take photographs, take them. Security cameras. Have your customer got any security cameras that might show gulls attacking people, or maintenance plans, maintenance call outs to someone to come and fix the guttering or unblock it because of all the build up? Accident book. Is there an accident book showing that one of the staff have been attacked by a gull and they've had to report it because they've got a, I don't know, gash to the head, or they're particularly scared that day and had to go home, whatever it might be. These are things that business should be recording themselves anyway, and you actively seeking it. So that's great evidence for the purpose. And then the species and numbers, of course, that's down to you to assess, to estimate. I mean, you'll get up to 3 eggs possibly in one nest. So yeah, you've got to count the nests. If you're going to a new job this year and you say, well, there's no nests there yet because they haven't started laying them, then you talk to your customer about last year. How many nests were there last year? And if they don't know, then I don't really know. We didn't really take any photos or anything. That can be a problem, of course, because that evidence is lacking there. And again, you need that evidence. If they've got a problem as such as hundreds of gulls on their roof that are causing serious problems, why on earth have they not got more evidence? Why is there no photographs? Why? I find it hard to understand that. So, this is a no holes barred. I'm being very honest here. I cannot understand why there would be a lack of evidence. If there was a genuine problem with a genuine risk to health and safety and public health and safety, why is there no evidence? It really concerns me about that site's management. But again, I'm being very direct there, and so maybe some of you might appreciate that, might not. I don't know, but I'm being honest. So once you've decided all that, you've then got the details of what non-lethal methods that you've decided to try. And again, record it. Your integrated pest management plan that you can download will assist with that a lot. Again, it might be, quotation examples that you've kind of said, look, this is going to cost £4.5 million to proof this area. It's not reasonable. So therefore, we need to do lethal control or egg and nest removal. It might be, falconry. You might have got a falconer out that said, "Oh yeah, this ain't going to work," and given you a report on why it wouldn't work. There we go. Some detail there, some evidence there. All of this stuff matters, and you need to get your own process, get your own way of doing things that you record it and gather it. Like I said earlier on, if you're carrying out goal control, you are experienced, you are skilled, you have the relevant competence to do this, and this is part of the relevant competence. It is part of the relevant competence now. Things might evolve a bit, probably towards getting a little bit easier or more, doing these applications and being successful, hopefully this year, in what you genuinely need to do. That's it. Brilliant. The years going forward, you'll know what you need to do. You know what you need to gather. You know what you need to tell your customers before you go and see them about what you need and what you don't need. It's about just knowing what you need to do and what you need to provide. It can't, if you apply for a license and you just think, well, I haven't got that evidence, hey ho, they should give me a license anyway. They won't give you a license. Guarantee you. Again, being very honest there, being very honest. So yeah, again, I've mentioned there, kind of went through it before, fault reports, from maintenance about why they're causing an issue, slips and trips from the droppings in the accident book, or gulls attacking people, or, the maintenance saying, no, we can't carry out that work on the air conditioning because them gulls are having a go at me. It might be an email, a mixture of things, an integrated evidence portfolio, lots of different things, as much as you can. And hopefully as the years go on, you'll have a real smooth process of, getting these things ticked off, getting this evidence gathered. The biggest problem last year, and maybe at the moment, hopefully everyone's getting a bit more used to it, is understanding what you need to provide and why. We don't want to be ignorant. We don't want to not know why we're having to provide this information, because that can breed laziness, or kind of not understanding why you're doing something may not push you to do that thing. But understanding why you need to do it hopefully will make you do it, and understand it fully. So yeah, all these things are good. Social media, might be social media posts of someone videoing a gull attacking their friend and thinking it's hilarious, and you can see what site it is. That could work. I think I've heard of a case where that's been accepted as evidence before. So yeah, lots of downloading and recording that you're going to need to do. You're going to need to do. So final thoughts then. How long have we got left? What's quite good. Ooh, we've got 20 minutes left after this last little bit. So that's good. Some good questions we got to go through. But yeah, some final thoughts. Licensing may be more strategic approach as we go on. And this is stuff that Natural England and again other nations, they will all become one, in terms of their approach and their strategy for goal control. Yeah, it might start in one place, it might start in Wales, it might start in England, but generally at the minute, Natural England are sort of doing a lot of the work, and then hopefully other nations maybe follow. But there is an opportunity to work with maybe a local authorities, getting, obviously when you've got large districts or large areas where there's a massive problem, they're looking at how they can work with local authorities a bit better, and maybe organizations. So you can get organization licenses, which if there is a reoccurring problem, and it's going to be an every year thing where you need to remove a certain amount of S, and then maybe it can be a different type of license that doesn't require this yearly application and evidence. I'm not familiar with organizational licenses, but interesting if that comes along. But as I said, that's things we can work on. So we've got a meeting with them on Friday, Natural England, to talk about the screening process, some other things. So again, just to reiterate that we work hard at trying to keep in real communication with them. Ian, our CEO, is always on their back, getting in touch with them, tell us what's happening, what's going on, what you're doing, do you need any more help from us? And yeah, we're very proactive with that. I can assure you. And yeah, if you need me to be any more honest than I already have been in terms of what you need to do, then do ask. Just before we go on to questions, I've got a slide coming up that I think I would love for all of you to take some note of, and possibly donate. So the BPCA for the last 18 months or so, we've been supporting Prostate Cancer UK. Before COVID, we used to do a few sessions. We'd do things like, we did try to do mud runs and some events to try and raise some money, and we'd have collection jars as well at some of our events for prostate cancer. Now, we've been a bit limited on what we could do last year, of course, but once we finish this webinar, you'll be sent a link or directed through to Prostate Cancer UK website. And if you'd like to donate, there's no pressure, of course, to anybody, but if you'd like to donate, you will be directed to that Just Giving page. And yeah, any amount would be much appreciated. And yeah, we can hopefully continue to support that in the UK. All right, fantastic. So we're going to go on to questions now. I'm going to stop sharing so you can see me completely and my terror at your questions that you might have. Okay, we've got 19 of them. Well, how long have we got? So what time are we on? Why can't I see my time? There it is. So yeah, just under 20 minutes. So we might get through a few of them. Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to pronounce this, am I? So from Dave Barham. Hi, Natalie. Do you think nicobazin, there we go, products for feral pigeons will come to the market anytime soon? Now, I believe this is it a narcotic, or is it no, it's not. It's to do with breeding, isn't it? And sterilizing them. So yeah, that's how much my knowledge is on it. So as you know, we haven't got it at the minute because it's not something I've read up on a lot. Possibly, if there's anybody out there listening today that knows a bit more about this product and wants to, put a comment in the Q&A, that would be great. If I don't get to it, again, it'll be on the sheet that we send out afterwards, so we can all see a response to that. But I haven't heard anything, Dave. I'm not that familiar with the product, but if there is anyone on here, that would be great to do that. Hi, Nat. That's Richard. I don't know if you put your full question in, Richard. I'll move on. Um, okay, so I think there's kindly share if goal control licenses are required in Gulf countries. I'm not sure what that means. Sorry there, Namal. I mean, in terms of this presentation, it's UK only. If there's anybody from other countries around the world that, might do goal control, everything I'm talking about today would be pretty useless to you. I'm sorry. Maybe at the beginning I could have warned you, but yeah, this is all very much UK legislation and requirement. It certainly won't apply to anywhere else. Okay, so from Ricky, who needs to apply for the license? So whoever is carrying out the work. Now, if say, I'm doing the actual egg and nest removal, then it should be me that's applying for it, or my name's going down, but you could fill it out on my behalf. So there is a section on the license for that. But it is you're the one doing the work. It's not the client or the owner of the premises that fills it out. You do give them the details. When you fill the form out, you'll put the premises address in, and you need to put a grid reference. FYI, everybody, grid reference in. It's straightforward if you know how. Any problems with that, you can probably give us a ring, and I'm sure we can help you out with that. But yeah, you fill the license out. If you're the one doing the lethal control, yeah, absolutely, you need to fill the license out. Okay, so if you want a CL12 license, it has to be AAP. I'm not sure if you finished the question there, Fraser. Sorry. Oh, here we go. You did below. If you want a CL12 license, it must be applied for by the airfield, not the pest control contractor. Yep, great comment. Of course. Yep. As I said, didn't really want to go into class licenses too much because, again, this is more to do with the individual licensing. But yeah, class license and organizational licenses are similar as well. Okay, so Ricky Rainbird, do you need a request? Sorry, do you need to request a license if you are using a bird of prey as a non-lethal control of method? Nope. As your words say, non-lethal method. Falconry is not a lethal method of control. Now, if, say, for example, you had a bird that you flew and you knew that it was prone to attacking the target bird, then that would be different because that's intent in a way of controlling them lethally or harming them. So yeah, you could get in trouble for that. But as a falconer or hawker, you're going to have the knowledge of your birds and what they do and don't do, and you're going to feed them properly so that they don't want to actually attack those birds. And yeah, they'll just fly around and kind of be a bit annoying to the gulls and hopefully move them on. That's what I do when I go to the office. I hang around a bit and annoy everyone and they go away. That's quite a common thing. Paul. Okay, Paul, how many licenses in the UK were approved? As everyone that I spoke to didn't get approval. There were people who put all the information required and understanding all the non-lethal methods. I think I possibly mentioned it just after you put this question on. I don't know any in England. I know most people in Scotland were successful, I've spoken to. Wales now had some feedback from a member that said they had a license, so they applied for a license for egg and nest removal, and the license came back, but it was only approved for egg replacement, which is not what they applied for, but that's all that the Welsh Assembly would allow. Is for they said no, we're not going to let you remove the eggs and nest, you'll have to replace the eggs instead. I was like, okay. The other thing to consider here as well is your timing for application. Now, if you apply for egg and nest removal and you send that license off, maybe you left it a little bit too late, or I hope this doesn't happen, but maybe Natural England are slow with it, but I'm hoping they won't be, or other nations, of course. If you apply for that nest and egg removal, and by the time you get the license back saying, yeah, no worries, off you go, and they've hatched into birds, that license is no longer relevant. Because it's no longer eggs. They're now chicks or birds. So you're going to have to reapply. Just as an FYI. Timing is everything. What is Natural England's view on when a cost to proof becomes too high? This is a grey area. Yeah, I mentioned this earlier, Nick. Again, it might have been just after you put your question on there. So we had a forum last year in December, and there was Natural England. Dave Brown was there talking about the licenses, and we put a question to him saying, look, is cost a consideration to, it being too high and therefore need to do lethal control? And he said, yeah, absolutely, of course. You've got to weigh it up. There's no one answer. There's no, oh, if the net costs above £22,057.07 or cents, where did that come from? Pence, you know what I mean? There's no marker. It's just based on your view, the site itself, and what's reasonable. If you've got a small cafe, they've got a small roof above, but the proofing work's going to be £70,000, and that's probably going to be too much for them, and unreasonable. But the goals still need dealing with because they're causing a severe public health and public safety issue. So the cost absolutely does come into it. And again, this is all the integrated pest management plan, but this all comes into create you having a template for yourself of, your goal action plan, your goal control plan, and, sections to it, and okay, costings, and this is what our costings were, this is what our quotations were, this is, however, it's not feasible, it's far too high, and you give your reasons, you give it in a report style that can be form of evidence, quotations being created, and then that view, an opinion given of, look, this is clearly too high. Now, if you've got a site that doesn't want to pay, 5,000 for a net, but they're happy to pay 500 for gull and nest removal, then that might not be as acceptable, because it's that balance of, well, 5,000, is it unacceptable? It's a real judgment call. And I couldn't say what Natural England would judge that, but you do your best that you can in terms of judgment. Okay, don't go. Where are we? So, Scott, would I need a general license to remove nests or the occasional egg and nest from domestic roofs before spiking or netting is installed? Just to cover that, it's not a general license, it's an individual license. If it's goal work, if it's pigeons, that's a general license. Do you know what? I can't spend any time on that. So, Scott, by all means, if you're a member and you want to give us a call, please do. We can discuss that a bit more. But if you're talking about gulls underneath, maybe a solar panel or something like that, I don't think they'll be able to get under there. But if they're on a domestic roof, it doesn't matter where they are. You need an individual license for gulls. You say that you won't destroy adult birds, but just move the problem. Applying for a license to individual domestic roof will be a nightmare and slow up the installation time and allow birds to become established. Again, it is what it is. Regardless of where you are or what type of property you're doing it for. However, for domestic properties where they're on a roof and they're causing a real, public health issue. Now, bear in mind, noise is an issue. Noise is not just a nuisance. If you've got gulls on your roof, they can keep you awake, wake you up early in the morning, or stress you out to a degree, and that's a public health concern. So that is absolutely necessary. And also, applying for the removal of 2 or 3 nests is going to be a lot more straightforward for you than it is for those on here that need to apply for a license that covers 2 roofs and maybe 100 birds, which could be 300 eggs, and 100 nests. It's a lot, that's a lot of stuff. So actually, for the domestic property, straightforward. And you need to include that in your pricing strategy. They need to understand that you've got to spend the time applying for an individual license. So when they call you for goals on the roof for whatever reason, and you need to remove them, your quotation, your suggestion to them includes the application for a license and the time scale that might take. That has just got to be your standard approach. If it's pigeons, you can use your general license. Type of goals, lifespan, is the natural predators who kill them. So goals are pretty, again, this isn't a biology or behavior lesson here, but because most people on it probably know a fair bit about biology and lifespan. But goals are, they're pretty aggressive birds. They're pretty big birds as well. You can see them chasing around, other bird species with, gay abandon, and they're pretty hardy, and especially once they're nested, they're pretty hard to move on. So in terms of non-lethal methods and falconry, trying to move on a gull that's already set itself up, you're not going to do it. And once they start laying that nest anyway, that could then be considered licensed territory, because you're disturbing a gull that's already put its nest down. It's, so tricky with that. But yeah, they're pretty big birds. The main species are, so the lesser black-back gull and the herring gull in the UK are the ones that we obviously focus on. The other gull species, not even really considered in this. You're very unlikely to come across problems with other birds. That's why, predominantly it's mentioned about the lesser blackback and the herring gull, and the conservation. I think they might be on the red list even. So getting a license for them is pretty unusual. So yeah, those two types there. I mean, the lifespan, just really quickly, the gulls will start laying their nests and their eggs usually end of March, beginning of April, maybe beginning of May. Depends on seasons, the weather, the species around, the village or town that you're in. But generally between beginning of April and beginning of May, those eggs were usually, well, usually within a month is when they will hatch out, and they'll take on first flight within about 10 days. So usually about 10 days, those young will take its first flight, but generally they'll stay quite close to the nesting area. It's actually about 5 to 6 weeks after they hatch out is when they'll obviously leave that nesting area and move on. And it's normally about August time when you'll start seeing problems disperse and no issues to be seen. So that's a general, I'm not a gull bird specialist. It's more the licensing process and legislation, but that's the basics to it. I won't go into any more. Got a good 5-6 minutes left. Stephen's asked about what about domestic control. Obviously, just mentioned that. Is nest removal classed as lethal even before eggs have been laid? So the nest, again, that term lethal, I suppose you think, well, I'm not being lethal here, but in a philosophical way, if you're moving that nest they've started building, then you're preventing them from laying those eggs that they intended to lay. So the nest and egg removal kind of comes hand in hand, really. I was having this chat yesterday with my our technical manager D, just as a discussion point of when does something become a nest an egg or a nest. Is it that first twig that's laid down, when if you're up there and you see the gulls and, oh, hang on a minute, they've started laying some nesting material down, that it's safe to say that that's the beginning of, we need to apply for a license now. Before that moment, when they're just generally flying around and you kind of think, oh, there's been problems last year, they're hanging around here, that's when maybe you get your birds of prey out and send Bob and Sarah up there every day to have a wander around, flapping their arms maybe. You don't have to do that, obviously. It's not an official technical solution, but could be one. Okay. Anyway, let's stop being silly. So Tracy, question: what have Natural England done to address the issues of 2020? So I did mention this a bit in the beginning. So mainly the issues, as we said, were communication and speed of application. So, throughout the year, I speak to people that, it started to take weeks and weeks for them to get the forms back, and then months and months. And some of them I don't even, maybe to this date, they never actually had a response. So is that communication? The expectation as well was an issue. So Natural England didn't expect the volume of applications that they had, which of course had an impact on their resource and being able to do, be quick with them. And also, because it was a brand new process that none of us was really used to, we maybe weren't getting the applications in as early as we should. And certainly, definitely, the evidence wasn't supplied. Now, I've looked at applications in the past that, a member has assured, look, I've attached the evidence, I've put everything in there I should. And I've had a little nose just to see whether there's anything I can suggest that needed adding. And every single time there was something missing, whether it be the grid reference or whether it be, the number of eggs and nests was left out because they felt they couldn't possibly decide what that is. But you leave that stuff out, they won't give it to you. We can't just say, oh, well, I think I should leave that out, or I think that's reasonable. It doesn't matter what you think, really. Again, I'm being really honest here. It doesn't matter what you think. The license needs what it needs, and you can tell us what you think, absolutely. And when we're talking to these nations, we'll absolutely put your views forward, and we'll take on board what can make this better. But the simple fact of it is, They are not just going to say, yeah, let's go and remove as many gulls and nests and eggs as we want to. Who cares about conservation status? That's the simple fact of it. The work that we do, animal control, pest control, it's a sensitive area, and legislation will always change to reflect, you know, in the interest of public health and public safety first. But there will be obstacles to get round to address that. They won't just let us decide on the spot. Yeah, I'll go and do that. No, that's how that is. So, has the urban goal numbers been completed yet for 2020? They're looking at it now. Maybe find a bit more out about it. But there isn't anything that I can share with you at the moment. Okay, Gabrielle. So, can anyone who has applied for the license and it have been approved can give us an indication of the approximate time spent to do this? Gabrielle, there isn't anyone in England that I know of that's had the license approved. In Scotland, definitely. I mean, if there is someone on there, I'm shouting this out now. I've only got like a minute left, so we might not get to it, but there's no examples for England that I can give you. In Scotland, it was days. I think maybe even just a week it took for the whole process to be approved. In Wales was similar to England, massive issues. But filling out the form, I mean, collecting the evidence could take you days, could take you weeks. It really depends on your relationship with the customer and how efficient you've both been in collecting evidence. And then it's how long it takes you to fill out the form. It might take you a couple of hours to be able to fill it all out, to figure out what's needed, etc. So yeah, it can take a bit of time. I'm going to do one more question and be really naughty because that'll probably take me over time. But hey, as long as you're all here, there's still 234 of you. So let's do one more. Let me try and find a good one that might be very useful to you all. Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm just a comment here. So from Keith, there ought to be a difference between taking eggs and nests compared with killing adults and controlling eggs and nests. The adults have the opportunity to move elsewhere. Yeah, I mean, in terms of, there aren't many applications I know of that actually request the ability to kill the adult. I mean, the old general licenses, the lesser blackback gull, you could shoot the adult as well as take the nest and eggs. Heron gull, you couldn't. It was only the nest and eggs. But yeah, I don't really know anyone that again, put a comment on here because all this information will go out to you guys afterwards. So if anybody has had to do that and tell us the process and etc., then let us know. But I believe, Keith, that eggs and nest removal is really all that happens. The definition between the two, again, I'm sure that would have been a lot of time taken up by the nations in discussing eggs and nests and what they are and what comes first, or not what comes first. We know what comes first, but what's more important. But that the assumption is once that first twig goes down, and nest starting getting built, that gull is like, yeah, I'm going to lay my eggs here. This is where I want to live. I'm going to put my eggs down on this nest. I've just got to build it first. So it's just as important as the eggs. Removing that nest. Philosophically, you're removing the eggs as well. So yeah, there we go. I'm 1 minute over. I've got 17 questions left. So again, I'll do, if just while I'm closing off here, anyone wants to quickly shove a few questions in there that they didn't manage to get that I can answer on a document and send out, please do. Otherwise, give me an email, give me a call if you're a member. I'm totally happy with you giving me a call and discussing particular issues or advice about what to gather, what not to gather. I'd even happily do a Zoom call with you and try and help you out with whatever it is. Just request it. And yeah, thank you everybody. Have a safe day, have a dry day. It's a bit rainy here, and yeah, we'll see you soon. Okay, take care. Bye bye.